So by now you probably already know one of the hottest news stories heading into the holiday 2025 season was of course the first of what will be 4 teaser trailers, all leading up to the big first official trailer for Avengers Doomsday. The first one we got featured the big return of Steve Rogers as Captain America. Also a baby. Also, I say it was hot, I'm sure the powers that be wanted it to be hot, but in reality the reaction was, well, tepid at best. Reactions were running mild, as they say. Oh sure, the trailer got a lot of views, that was always gonna happen. It's connected to the Avengers, basically Hollywood's biggest media franchise, maybe ever, and it was such a soft time to release a trailer like this, so the fact that they didn't get the reaction they wanted has gotta sting more than a little, right? In fact, it's kinda gotta be a major cause for concern, because this sort of thing has basically never happened before. It's probably because I'm such a dyed-in-the-wool comic book fan that the response that this teaser trailer got confused me as much as it did. The big, gimmicky return of a hero who has been gone for a protracted amount of time basically never fails to get comic book readers' tongues a-wagging. Either be it in Marvel when the Avengers and Fantastic Four returned after getting onslaughted away, be it all the times the Flash family of characters returned, and seriously, they returned so much, that the idea that none of this did anything for Joe and Jane Popcorn just kinda does my head in. I sat with this problem for a really long time, basically all over Christmas, and I think I came to the very horrifying realization that in this situation, the MCU actually learned all the wrong lessons from Marvel Comics. And that in this situation, simply bringing back an old face is not enough to spark joy in moviegoers, that they might actually want and demand more. Now, there's plenty of good reason out there as to why this might actually be the case. Remember, the MCU itself was built on the idea of novelty, showing people in things that they had never seen before in the superhero space, that there's a whole world out there beyond just the recognizable faces like your Spider-Mans and your X-Men's. I mean, when the MCU started, they had so much less to work with, you have to remember. They worked so much harder to get veritable unknowns like Hawkeye and Black Widow and Thor over with your average audiences, and I mean, I think the success more than speaks for itself. But here's the truth about novelty. Over time, it erodes, it degrades. There's more Marvel movies, TV shows, animation, and games out there than ever before, and a lot of people are saying that it just simply doesn't feel as special as it once did, and I mean, yeah, how could it possibly be? Here's why I'm saying things feel different this time. No matter how you might feel about the last phase of Marvel movies, love them or hate them, they always dominated the conversation. You had to have an opinion on them, but now, maybe for the first time ever since the MCU's birth, no one cares how you feel about Captain America coming back. Some people can't even manage to muster the energy to talk about it at all. They just kind of feel nothing, and that could very well be the worst possible thing for any new project moving forward. We can point to any number of reasons as to why this might be the case this time around. Lord knows there were plenty of leaks and fake trailers making the rounds that heralded Chris Evans' return. Factor in the fact, too, that Chris Evans coming back was one of those things that was bound to happen inevitably, and when he got, photographed out in public, getting back into Captain America shape, I think we all pretty much knew what was coming, so it's kind of hard to be surprised for what was ultimately such a terribly kept secret. Then, of course, there's the other major elephant in the room that needs addressing, and that is the fact that for the first time ever, the MCU has had some real true blue competition in the form of the new Superman and the James Gunn DC cinematic universe. Somehow, someway, this guy has managed to make a character as old as Superman feel more novel than ever, throwing in tons of characters that a lot of people never thought they would see on screen, like Metamorpho, like Guy Gardner, etc., etc. Suddenly, everything that's old feels new again, and suddenly Marvel, well, they're not the shiny toy on the shelf anymore, are they? Another sentiment I'm seeing making the rounds all the time on the internet now is that one of the main reasons people are so apathetic about Steve Rogers' return as Captain America stems from the fact that a lot of people really loved his send-off originally, getting to see him grow old and settle down with the woman he loved in Peggy Carter, getting to see him pass the mantle to Sam Wilson as the Falcon. It's a beautiful scene, loved by many for plenty of good reasons, one that stands out as maybe one of the high points of Marvel's entire filmography, and a scene that many people are now feeling carries less impact than ever before, given this new reveal. Now, while I certainly think there's some validity with this argument, I don't know if I fully subscribe to it myself. Again, I'm a comic reader through and through. Characters die all the time. Sometimes their deaths are good, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're nothing. Usually everybody comes back at some point, so I try and not get too precious with it. But again, these are movie people we're talking about here, not comic people. They're not used to all the same tropes we are, and they're going to respond differently, as I think we are seeing now for the first real time. Hell, a lot of this assumes that this actually is the Steve Rogers that we followed in the other movies and not some sort of wibbly-wobbly, time-displaced, multiversal version of the character, which, hey, let's face it, could always be a possibility, and if that does end up being true, I think that opens up a whole other can of worms in and of itself, which, man, you know, at some point I'm probably gonna have to make a video about how the whole multiversal concept affected the last phase of Marvel movies, but you know what, now I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, most of what I've been talking about so far has pretty much just been, you know, nerdy fan problems. There's also probably a much bigger problem when it comes to optics. Having Chris Evans return to the role of Steve Rogers, Captain America, so close to the news that the Russo brothers would be returning behind the camera, and that Robert Downey Jr. would also be returning, not as Iron Man, but Doctor Doom, suddenly they start to look a little desperate, that maybe they are in more dire straits than we thought, and maybe there is a real effort to try and right the ship any way they possibly can, even if doing so is more of an attempt to recapture old glories instead of doing what they maybe should have been doing and steering the ship towards new, uncharted waters in more interesting ways. It kind of feels like the cinematic equivalent of a band that was big in the 80s. Oh, sure, they still headline venues, but they're a little slower now, a little chunkier around the midsection. No new crap, only playing taking care of business right now, if you catch my drift. Bringing Steve back, too, also ends up opening up a whole can of worms for poor Sam Wilson, making the return of the original Captain America such a major focal point of your ad campaign. Doesn't that just feel like a slap in the face to all the hard work that went into trying to get Sam over as the brand new Captain America for a brand new generation of films? I mean, Brave New World was far from perfect. Hell, the fact that it released in a semi-coherent form at all, knowing everything we know now about its reshoots, reworkings, and general behind-the-scenes chaos, in my mind, makes it nothing short of a miracle. But man, there was definitely room to grow here. There were places to go, and now it feels like there's kind of a little bit of a stopper in the way. Now, again, I'm coming at this mostly as a comic reader and a comic fan. Having multiple versions of the same hero was never a problem for me. We've got multiple Spider-Mans, multiple Hawkeyes, multiple Wolverines, and yeah, of course, multiple Captain Americas, but I'm trying to think of this as a moviegoer. They haven't had nearly as long to get to know these characters, so having, you know, multiple versions of the same one creates a little bit of confusion in the marketplace, even if, you know, there is a little part of me, you know, deep down in my nerdy heart where I'm like, we're gonna have Sam and Steve fight side by side in this movie, aren't we? We're gonna have them, you know, throwing two shields at once, and that's probably gonna be a good scene, and that's probably something they're banking on, I have to imagine. I'm also not so ignorant of film and film production to think that Steve Rogers is going to stick around after this movie is all said and done. Chris Evans has been very, very vocal in the past about him wanting to do other things creatively, including directing, so I don't imagine him coming back for a whole new Captain America movie, though then again, this is Disney we're talking about, so they always could just drive a couple dump trucks of money up to his house and see what happens. I also very much respect Anthony Mackie as a performer performer and a box office draw and someone who, really inhabits the character of Sam Wilson, I think he will get over. I think he has lots of fans that are uniquely his own. I just cannot help but feel that the MCU is making his job a lot harder right now, and I do not envy the situation they're putting him in right now at all. Now, fun fact, I've actually been working on this video for so long that by the time I had it written and edited, the second teaser featuring Thor just so happened to drop. And even though I cannot help but feel that it was met with about the same level of apathy as the Cap trailer was, I actually ended up liking this one a lot more, if only for the fact that there seems to be a real effort here in trying to move Thor's character forward. No more navel-gazing, no more trying to dig up the past and look to former glories. Instead, they do seem to want to move Thor forward, specifically as a father to love. Now, feel however you want about Thor Love and Thunder. I have my own complicated feelings about it myself as a Taika Waititi fan, but there just feels like there's a different tack being taken with Thor. Maybe that's because Chris Hemsworth never left. Maybe that's why it feels like such an easier pill to swallow creatively. Maybe they should have done the same thing with Cap. Hell, maybe they should have left Steve out of the proceedings altogether. I don't know, and only time will tell, but what I am certain of is that this is the first time that I have seen people just genuinely not care about an MCU thing, and that certainly cannot be a good sign. Perhaps this will end up serving as a lesson moving forward that despite the comic books being the blueprint at the end of the day, you cannot expect all the same tricks and all the same gimmickry that has worked on us comic readers since time immemorial to do the same thing for your average mom and pop moviegoer. People love a good comeback, people love feeling vindicated, but they also feel like they want their time to actually matter, that what they have invested into something will ultimately be returned to them. And that sometimes a cheap trick, a nostalgia pop, ends up being just that, a cheap trick and a nostalgia pop.